Yep.
Okay. Shall I say? Because I thought of this the other day and it sounds so good.
Oh God. Is this filming like right now?
No. It's
Power off.
I know. Okay.
Go on, say what you're
I'm going to say. But I'm not, because you'll just laugh. Okay, guys. Welcome to Stride Performance, and today we're joined by Kaine Sheppard. Kaine's been one of our clients now for probably 12 years. He started his career in England and kind of like he's found his way over to Australia. He's going to give us a little bit of a breakdown of his career, how he's got to where he's got to and where he's looking to go in the future. So Kaine, just give us a breakdown of kind of like where you started, where you're headed and where you've been.
Yeah, so when I was 16, I went to Leyton Orient and did my scholarship, and that's where I think I first came in to see you. I had my first serious injury with my ankle, and I couldn't get it better, I couldn't fix it, so I got recommended to come see Steve, and we've been friends ever since.
That's a lie.
And not long after that, probably when I was 20 years old, I moved across to Australia, played second division over there. Made my way back to Finland. What's that? Scandinavia. And
what was just at that time? So obviously you're playing in Australia, second division. What are your thoughts in terms of where you wanted to go from there?
Yeah. So the reason I went to Australia is I watched a bit of A-League on TV. I wasn't really enjoying my football in England at the time.
Well, why was that though? Was that kind of like the politics of the game, or was it kind of like the way players were treated, or what was it you kind of thinking?
To be honest, it was more just my head.
Oh, okay.
I was very inconsistent with
how you were playing?
Yeah, and how I was playing.
What sort of help were you getting at that time in terms of you know your coaches at the clubs you were at and things like that? Was it something you kind of like found yourself kind of like not being ignored, but almost like you weren't getting the guidance you needed from a footballing perspective?
For me, it's all like a lot about psychology and mindset, and I feel like there's still not enough of it out there. Like I would get guidance in terms of, maybe on the pitch you can do this better, or maybe you can get a little bit faster still, or maybe a bit stronger in the gym, which I always would do all that stuff, and we worked a lot on that stuff, and I definitely got that, but there was still something that was like inconsistent, and for me I probably didn't get the guidance with the psychology side of things that I probably needed at that age, and in the 8 years now since I left, I've worked on that probably more than
the actual physical side of things.
Yeah.
But did you find at that time, obviously from a psychological perspective, that it was very erratic in the results you were getting, in terms of like one day you'd have that really good strong thought process, then you'd go and play and it kind of like didn't work out, and then other times you maybe was feeling a little bit negative or whatever, but then it did work out, so there was kind of inconsistencies in what you were thinking and then how you took that into your game?
Yeah, pretty much. So one day I'll turn up, play a game, score a hat-trick and be the best player ever. And then the next week I'd turn up and I was just tired before the game even started. I felt like I couldn't control the ball. And then I'd let my negative thoughts take over and I'd be like, I'm not very good, and then I would go on a run of not scoring goals, but really I knew I could do it. I knew I could play well consistently.
Yeah, because you had.
Yeah, exactly, and I would do it. And my dad used to say to me, like, last week you were the best player on the pitch and this week you might as well not even been there.
That's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
what made you start thinking about that then? In terms of, were you just then thinking about the psychological side of it?
Not really until I moved to Australia. So Australia was I was probably just trying to get away from it all a little bit. But I knew I still wanted to play. And then because I met you, I started doing my studies in strength and conditioning.
Great influence on these people, great influence.
Well, not if you look at my body right now.
Yeah, okay.
But I started doing that, and then I think the biggest thing for me is just keep being curious, trying to find out how I could be better. I went on a couple of courses, and then they started talking a bit more about psychology. And then
I think that's massive, that side of it, that self-belief, that keeping that constant belief that you can do something, rather than having that am I good, am I not good, those kinds of things. It must go through your mind all the time.
Yeah, it's just that overthinking, and I just became curious because they were talking about certain things and I would resonate with that, and I go, that sounds like me.
Yeah. So who would be saying that? Other players or coaches or
coaches just on courses?
Okay.
It wasn't even specific to football, but I could relate it back to football and just life in general. And I go, that just sounds like me, and certain things, and I just got more curious. And then, like, you know, when you start reading one person's stuff, you just read more people's stuff.
Of course.
And yeah, I even did a couple like courses in that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But at the time, it was more just for myself than anything, just being curious and just wanting to learn. And still to this day, I'm still trying, you know, overcome those thoughts or, you know, that inconsistency and stuff.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. So from there, you're obviously playing second division in Australia. So now you've come to Finland. How did that come about, and why did that come about?
So you know Brian as well.
Yeah. Yeah, of course he was managing him.
He was the assistant coach at the time, and we still talk.
That's somebody that we would have both worked with when we were back in the Histon Football Club kind of days.
Yeah. So he was assistant coach, and we still talk as friends and stuff. And he just said they were looking for a striker, but he said the coach wanted to see me first, so I had to fly myself over there. So I flew over there, trialled for 2 weeks, and then signed for them and stayed there for I think 6 months. I think it was.
Okay. Was that was that kind of like a whole season, or was that a case of you joined and then partway through a season, then finished the season there?
That was halfway through the season, so the week before they lost in the Europa League qualifiers.
Okay.
So I just missed out on that. But that was halfway through the season, then we played the back end of the season.
Okay.
There.
And do you enjoy your experiences out there?
Yeah, it was really good. The football they tried to play and things like that was good. It was a lot more technical.
Okay. So what made you kind of like move on from there?
The coach that signed me got sacked.
Oh,
and then
that's football. That's football. Yeah.
Yeah, and another coach came in and he wanted to play. He himself was from Finland and he wanted to produce more young Finnish players.
No, again, that's going to happen.
Understandable. So
back to the drawing board.
Back to the drawing board, but also again psychology. I wasn't where I am now, and it had a big part. I lived on my own, no family, no nothing. I found it really tough. Again, probably went through a bit. I was, oh, do I actually want to play anymore?
Okay.
I've only probably had that 3 times in my career. So I came back to England. I think I saw you again, saw my family.
Obviously give you a good shaking.
Yeah, fixed my body up again.
We go again?
We go again, and then I went back to Australia again.
Okay, and then when back in Australia, what was happening then?
I just wanted to enjoy my football again, so I went back to the second division team.
Right.
And just, I don't know. I look back now and I can kind of understand some of the things psychology-wise, but I just went and had fun and enjoyed myself.
Play without fear.
Play without fear.
Which is what, you know, that's what we try and say to a lot of people is, you just go and enjoy it for what it is, and then the rest of it will take care of itself. It's when you start to overthink these things, it's when the anxiety comes in and then things don't work out how you want them to.
The biggest thing for me was probably I was trying to set goals, I wanted to go to the next levels, all that stuff, but I had this inconsistency and then I wasn't reaching that next level, so I started to have
frustration again.
Frustration, anxiety, and then I just like all explode.
Yeah.
Whereas this time I went back and I was like, I would like to go to the A-League, but I'll just go play, see what happens.
One game at a time.
And I ended up scoring 20 goals in 26 games.
20 goals in 26 games.
So I had my best goal scorer in season, and I just had fun. Like the whole season, I just enjoyed myself.
Totally different mindset.
And then got towards the end of the season, and I made a video up for myself, and on Facebook, everyone likes this story. I sent my video to the CEO of Newcastle Jets on Facebook.
What, just randomly out of the blue?
I just added him and just sent it to him. And luckily the night before we played an FA Cup game, and I scored a goal, and then he recognised my name, so he watched it. And then he invited me on trial, so I went on trial. And then the story goes, I went on trial, we played a game, I scored a goal, the coach signed me, but apparently before I went up there on the trial, he said he didn't want me to go. But the CEO said, oh, just let him come because he's already paid for it, we'll sort it out.
How interesting.
And then I went and then he signed me after.
So his decision was made on you before you got there, but then you managed to change it in how you play.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's brilliant. But that's football. That can happen. You know, people's opinions can change very quickly. And if you've got the right mindset and the right drive to make something happen, and don't be negative about it, then things can change. I see it all the time with the guys that we work with, in that you've got players that are told they're not good enough or whatever, but then are able to then show what they can do, and those opinions can change. Anything can change. And football's a massive opinion business, but it can be changed. So then obviously you then played for the Jets, which obviously was the level you were trying to get to anyway.
Yeah. Which
even from that as a goal is massive.
Yeah, it was massive, and the season before, I went there, they made the grand final and stuff, so it was a bit different in Australia where they play. Yeah. But they made the grand final, played in front of 35,000 people or whatever, which was really good, and then I got to go there next season. Played Asian Champions League, which was really cool. Played some other teams, played against the Japanese team, which were really good. 10 yeah. But I mean, that's the difference between, I was on the bench to start with, but I watched our warm up and it was more, sports sciencey stuff, all that stuff. They literally just did volleys.
Yeah, and enjoyed it.
Played some possession. They came on the pitch and just passed it around us.
Yeah, that's what they do.
And honestly, it was a joy to watch.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see the difference in what people.
Their approaches, but then you know from the dynamics of a Japanese kind of like just a physical capability, they will be very fast, nippy, but they're never going to play it long because they know that physically they're not going to be able to come up against the bigger guys, so they must play the ball around you. Yeah. That's how they play. But I totally get that. So obviously you then played for those guys.
Yeah.
I know you said about then a new manager came in.
Yeah.
Kind of like wasn't having you. That happens.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the end of that, I guess, that chapter of your football. So then from there, where did we go from there?
Yeah, so I was at Newcastle. I had a rare injury with my toe.
Oh, okay.
So I ruptured my ligament on the side of my big toe that holds it in place.
Okay.
So it was
happen very often.
Like this.
Right.
So I got that repaired, came back from injury, then a new coach came in, and then COVID hit. So I moved back down to Melbourne, because that's where I base myself out normally. And then ended up going to Western United.
Okay. Is they another second division side?
No, so they're A-League as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're top division. Again, I messaged the sports director, and luckily enough, I probably messaged it 4 or 5 times, but every other time he said, no, we've got no spots, because in Australia you have a certain amount of spots, like 23 I think it is, and if they're full you can't sign more players. And I just messaged him, we went on holiday, and again I kind of just was like, oh, I'll message him, whatever happens, happens. And then he replied to me and said, oh, we just had a player leave, so if you want to come in on Monday and we'll go. So I played a couple of games for them, trained with them, and then they signed me.
See, and then that just shows you're in a situation there again where you've got nothing to lose, have you?
Yeah.
You had nothing to lose by messaging them. A lot of people will have got that fear of not even messaging in the first place. But what's the worst that can happen? They'll say no.
Yeah. If you see my LinkedIn profile there, you just keep scrolling for a long time.
Okay guys, and welcome back to the second part of our interview with Kaine Sheppard. Obviously we've got a bit of an insight in the first part about where he's currently at in his career, how it's kind of progressed. Now we're going to see the kind of like where he's at up to date, and then we're going to find out a little bit of thoughts if he was having to look back and think about kind of where his career's got to and what he would do differently. So Kaine, so currently we've got to the point of where kind of like COVID had just struck. What was the situation there in Australia? Obviously, you've spoken to your parents who do live in the UK. What was kind of like the differences between the two?
Yeah, so COVID came, and my first recollection of that was everyone was buying toilet paper.
Yeah, we kind of had that same issue here too.
Yeah, I didn't know why at first. And then all of a sudden, within the next couple of days, it all became this big thing, and within like 2 weeks, the league basically said, we're going to pause it for a bit, we don't know if we can continue. And because of where people live in Australia, different states, borders, all that kind of stuff, they said, if you want to go home, like you can. And I'm based in Melbourne. Okay. So I went back down to Melbourne, and stayed there, and COVID was there pretty much the next 2 years.
Okay, so how did that affect your football in terms of was everything just stopped?
So everything stopped for a while, and then they actually tried to get the league finished, so they went to a hub, but I didn't actually continue at Newcastle. Because the coach didn't want me, or for whatever reason, I decided to stay.
How did that feel at the time?
It was tough. It's never nice, you want to play football, you enjoy it, all that stuff, but I made the decision not to go back for my own mental health, pretty much.
Was that affecting you quite badly at the time?
It was, just because, I just wanted to play football, doing all the right things, as always. And as always, try and be professional, do all the right things, and, when I've done everything I can, and, the coach at the time or whatever doesn't even want to talk to you, or just
was that bad?
Pushes you aside, makes you stand on the sideline, just doesn't even.
So were you still involved in training and things like that? Did they have like a reserve team set up that you were involved in?
So it was kind of a youth team, but they trained at like night time. They don't get paid much money, so they had school or they had work, and they trained at night time. So I still trained.
And was that with them or with the first? You're still with the first team?
Still with the first team.
Okay.
Still with the first team. Still scoring goals. Still training hard. Still doing all the right things.
But still just overlooked.
Yeah. So try to see what I could improve on, as always.
Were you asking these questions?
Yeah.
What sort of feedback are you getting?
I don't know how much detail you want to go into him, but I went into the office and sat down and said, what have I got to do to play for you? Because honestly, I actually liked the sessions that we were putting on. They were high intensity, there was lots of good information, and I was learning a lot as well. But obviously you want to be able to do that on the pitch. So I sat down with him, sat in his office and said what I've got to do to play, and he gave me 3 things. One was sprints, in training, more explosive sprints, all that stuff. A few more extras after training with the striker coach that we had at the time, and score more goals. Which I did plenty of that, and then from there he didn't speak to me again.
Wow, that must be so tough to be in an environment like that. But that is the kind of story I hear all the time, where players, they're kind of doing everything they possibly can, but still get overlooked. I just think football's just a game of opinions, so you just never really know what that manager's thinking of you. And obviously, from a footballer's perspective, you want to play, but the problem you've got is he's got his idea of what a team should be. So it's always tough for the individual.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for me was then I would try too hard, if that makes in a way. So I like doing strength conditioning, I like doing extra training, I like doing the mindset stuff, nutrition, everything. But I felt like I go too far.
Yeah,
I feel like I have to impress.
Yeah.
When actually I just kind of chilled out a little bit,
and then just enjoy it.
Yeah, and stop trying to worry about the outcome too much.
Yeah.
Because that's when I felt
like
like
the process.
Yeah, the anxiety and all that came on a little bit too much, and then I started to enjoy myself a bit more. And I think the environment's big. There was a group of friends I had in Newcastle that, after training and stuff, we would go have a coffee. We were lucky we lived next to the beach. Play cards, so I could take my mind away from football a little bit. I think for me that's one of the biggest things I've probably learned is when you're at training, be there 100%, be present, give it everything you got. If you've got to do a little bit of analysis, or is that the word? Analysis? Do it, but then there has to be a point where you take your mind away from football and find something else that you enjoy, and that doesn't mean go out and
party or whatever.
Yeah, do all that stuff, but if you've got a
girlfriend,
girlfriend, do things with them, do things with your friends, find something to study, take your mind away from it. Because I found in my younger days, I was just every 24 hours a day it was football.
That's really interesting to say that. But obviously, from my perspective, I always say to guys that it's particularly from a footballing perspective in what you want to achieve. If football's your plan A, to then have a plan B, plan A then tends to fail, because what tends to happen is you focus on too many things and then you get distracted from the actual football side of things. But I think what you're saying about there is using football as the plan A, but it's not that it's a plan B, it's just a something to take your mind away from the football. Obviously your football is still the plan A and you're doing everything possible to achieve what you can achieve in football, but then you've got these other things going on, but that they just help sort of like de-stress you almost.
Yeah. I just found that because if I was thinking about football 24/7, I would be exhausted, mentally exhausted. But when I took my mind away from it, but I still do the little things, if I had an afternoon off, I still go to the gym and do my recovery. I still do all the right things.
But there was a set time for them.
Yeah, but I just made sure when I was there, I was present, following the process, doing what I needed to do. And then I would go away and, do something else, like simple things like a recipe and cook, because that just took my mind away from things, and enjoy being with friends, play cards.
In the moment, sort of.
Yeah, and just be present more than just worrying about kind of what's going to happen tomorrow, and is he going to talk to me and things like that.
It must be horrible to be in that situation. That'd be like having a job where you work 9 to 5 and you're not every day not knowing what the boss is going to be like with you.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty tough going, isn't it? I can get that. So obviously it went a little bit sour then at Newcastle. Where did we go from there?
So I went back to Melbourne, and then their season finished for a little bit or whatever, and then they went back to pre-season. And I was still looking to get into another team. Weren't sure what was going to happen with all the season and stuff like that. For a bit, I started training with like a second division team again, just to play some games and train.
Get confidence.
And just enjoy it again. And then I went to Western United.
So who are Western United?
So they're a newly formed team in the A-League, probably I think maybe 3 or 4 years now. So quite new. So
but they're still playing in the A-League, so they're equivalent to the Newcastle Jets.
Yeah, so exactly the same level, but they were based in Melbourne.
Okay.
So I managed to play there, and COVID was still going on. And for people that don't know, Melbourne was #1 lockdown in the world.
Wow.
By the end of COVID, we weren't allowed to leave the country. We had to get exemptions for everything. And even then, before I went to Western, I'd mentioned a few people overseas and stuff, and they want me to come over and train, and I actually couldn't. You had to prove that you were leaving for more than a certain period of time, or you had a job or an exemption and stuff like that, otherwise they wouldn't let you leave.
Wow.
Which made it very difficult.
I can imagine.
But yeah, I managed to get to Western United, played there for the last 6 months of the season. Yeah, enjoyed that. And
so what was your sort of stats from that? Did you play well? How many sort of games were you playing in that period?
I think I played about 10 games.
Okay.
I came towards the end of the season. Played a bit of striker, mainly came off the bench. But again, didn't play that much really, as much as I would have liked.
Right.
But again, did all the right things, trained really well. And then, yeah, that came to an end in July.
Okay, and so what happened after that?
We were still in lockdown.
So, yep, good old lockdown.
Still in lockdown, but luckily I built a gym.
Okay,
in my garage at home, so I was still able to train. I was still able to go to the park and train and run and do all that stuff. And then I was holding out a bit, looking for a new club. Nearly went up to Brisbane. Didn't work out. COVID restrictions, quarantine, money, whatever it was big, didn't work out. And then, yeah, spoke to a few people, and they said, if you come back to England or over this way, we'll look to help you out, get you a club. Might be easier if you're here, because you're just around the corner instead of the other side of the world.
Of course.
I've got family here, so I thought it might be nice to come and see them.
And obviously get the opportunity to come and train in the dungeon with us guys.
Yeah, I was going to get there, but yeah, came over and...
This is kind of where you're at.
Yeah, I think my phone's broke, but anyway.
No, I'm sure it's not. Okay, so that brings us up to date as to where Kaine is currently at in his career. So the question I'll ask now, Kaine, to you is, obviously you've had quite a long career. It's been a bit stop-start. There's been, things that haven't quite worked out and kind of like gone your way. And obviously there's things that are out of your control. And like we always say to people, it's control the controllable. And in this situation, managers' opinions of you and what they see and how they see you, whether you're an inherited player or whatever, we can't control that. You can only do what you can do. But if you were to look back now, kind of like from when you were 14, 15, 16 and you were looking to get these scholarships when you're back in this country, what do you think, just to some of our younger guys out there, what would you do slightly different that you kind of like might have stood you in a better stead to have got yourself a club when you were a little bit younger?
Yeah, for me, number one would be psychology.
Okay, so guys out there, that's basically the mindset of what's required to become a better athlete, more resilient, with a better mindset to be able to kind of like withstand the rejections of football. I guess that's kind of what you're talking about.
Pretty much. And the biggest things that probably hit that more for me was, you get the old, you got to be mentally strong today, you got to believe in yourself more, I'll be more confident. Last week you were really confident, this week you don't seem confident. But my question was, and this is probably the thing, I always ask questions. If I don't, and you know this because I always ask you questions, sometimes you reply, sometimes you don't.
I never reply.
But I always ask, well, how do I do that? It's easy to say it.
Exactly that. It's so easy.
Believe in yourself.
Okay, so, no, I totally get where you're coming from with that. It's so easy for people to say, you need to work on your mindset. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
You need to be more confident. Last week you were confident, this week you're not confident. Why? But if you don't know the answer to those questions, it might just be a case of, in training, you've banged in 3 top corner, felt top of the world, next time in training you've scuffed one, you're not going to be confident. And it's finding that balance where everything comes together on a continual basis and regularly. That's what I think the biggest issue is. And that's down to, the very best players in the world would scuff or shank one and that would be forgotten instantly, and they just carry on. Whereas guys that kind of haven't got that inner belief, then maybe that would affect them then for the rest of the session.
Yeah. But then my question is, or was and still is, how do they do that? What are the things they do to get there? But I wouldn't just look in football. I'd look in other sports as well. So like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant.
The best, the greatest.
Roger Federer was a big one for me. I looked into his stuff. When he was younger, he used to shout at everyone and he used to hit his racket, and something happened in his life and he just changed his mentality. And
just like that.
Yeah, now you see him on the court, he doesn't say anything.
No.
And it's worked out well for him. But I think just being curious and asking questions, and if someone doesn't want to answer your questions, then they're probably not the right people to help you along the journey, because they should always be willing, in my opinion, to want to help you.
Yeah, of course, it's part of humanity,
and move forward. So yeah, psychology for me was the biggest thing that I would have worked on more, and still is to this day. But then I'm a big fan of the strength and conditioning side of things, because I know how much that helps me as well. And
so would you have got involved in that maybe at an earlier age?
Yeah.
Just understanding movement and function maybe a little bit more, rather than just generic gym stuff.
Yeah, I think so. If I could have done it from a 13, 14-year-old when I had real bad Osgood sladders, because I used to be really fast. But when I got knee issues, I lost a lot of coordination. My body.
Yeah, you've gone through a growth spurt. That always happens.
Yeah.
And then again, if you've had somebody that would give you that education to understand what's actually going on with the body during that period, then you'd have probably maintained that speed and kept going. But obviously, you've gone to a GP, which is the normal, and they would have said to you, you need to rest.
Yeah.
Rest isn't solving the issue.
And I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's education, and educating yourself as much as you can, because you can always learn stuff. But it's having the right people and knowing the right people that can put you in the right direction, because there's a lot of stuff out there as well that is useless.
Definitely.
So I think it's knowing the right people as well. But even for parents, education. Like I talk to my parents and we go, oh, maybe there's a couple of things could have done differently, but you know what you know at the time.
Exactly.
And we didn't get educated on a lot of stuff. So I think parents, they play a big role in their children's
development.
Yeah, development. So I think if they can learn as well and help their children even more, I think that's a big thing. But yeah, just being curious, education, learning, and really remembering why you started and enjoying it as well. Because I think as you get older and they start to put pressure on you and money gets involved and all that stuff, and
it becomes less enjoyable.
Yeah, and you forget why you started when you were a kid and you're running around taking everyone on, nutmegging people, scoring goals, and
you wouldn't have remembered those days.
Well, it takes a lot, and it's like, I've got one story for me is my dad always reminds me, but it just shows that when you get negative feedback all the time, you block out those memories. I went to Aston Villa when I was 8 years old, and I played left back at the time. And I dribbled everyone on the pitch and scored a goal. And it was like, everyone was, oh, look at that, that's amazing. Even I was like, oh, that's really good. The coach, don't do that.
No, I totally get
So they put these limitations on you as well. And then it's like you forget those memories of, what was good, what you enjoyed. And
what you could do.
Yeah, exactly, what you could do. And then you get anxious and you get fear on the pitch and you go, oh,
I shouldn't be doing any of them things.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I used to be able to do some things like that. Why can't I do it anymore?
Because you've had it drummed out of you not to do it.
Yeah.
And then there will be occasions in the game when you should be able to do that.
Yeah.
License to kind of like,
And on the odd occasion you will do it and you'll go, oh yeah, I can actually do it. But then you'll go, oh, but he told me not to.
Yeah, and that comes back as a memory, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I'll go back to that. It's even like for a striker when you miss a shot and everyone like hammers you for it or something like that, you're starting to get...
Right, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah, but
it's
like
in reality, if that had gone top corner...
But the best strikers in the world learn to just laugh it off and zone out and go again. So.
Exactly that. I totally agree. And then they'll bang three in on the trot, and then that one would have been forgotten. Yeah. Whereas you probably wouldn't take any more because you're so fearful of what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
But no, I totally get that. And I think from a footballer's perspective, mindset is massive. Obviously, the strength and conditioning is as well. And then obviously, as a youngster, I know we've spoken before. You did a lot of like specific stuff for your football, didn't you? I remember you saying about the drills and that you used to do, that you almost self-taught, and that must have played a massive part in how good you are technically with the ball, bringing the ball down and things like that. Because I think that's probably one of your strongest attributes, is your ability to play and deliver the ball when it comes to you, isn't it?
Yeah, I think my biggest attributes are my first touch and my actual football intelligence, and I think that actually, like looking back, I'm glad I learned that, because when I had all my knee problems and growing and all that stuff, I had to learn a different way to play football. I couldn't just run anymore because I was fast and I could just run before. So I had to learn, and I had good coaches who would change my position to help me and teach me different things. And I really had to work on my passing more, my first touch more, my awareness more of like, all right, well maybe I won't beat him for pace, but if I can knock the ball there and get in the box, I'm still going to get there before him. Some of the best players in the world, they're not fast, but their brain is faster than everyone else.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff, when you meet the right people, you can work on the speed, the strength.
Of course, there's always room for improvement, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's almost like, I don't know, there's 5 or 6 sections of being a professional footballer, and it's just learning about each of them. And at the start, it's like I had no idea about any of it. But then the more you learn, the more you can start to put it together, you start to become a bit more of a round.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's so interesting you should say that, because that's kind of like whenever I speak to guys that are particularly, younger guys, I always say to people that the difference between like the very best Premier League players, for instance, and those that are playing National League or below, is it's almost like having a jigsaw puzzle of 20 parts. The guys in the Premier League have got 20 parts of their jigsaw. The further down you go, there's less and less pieces in their jigsaw. So it's literally like what you've just said, it's finding those parts and working on those individual parts to get the whole of your jigsaw in place, isn't it? That's exactly, that's how I would look at it. So no, I think that's been really, really interesting in terms of understanding where you're at, where you've been, and kind of like then having a chat about kind of like ways that you would have improved it. And I think, for you guys out there, I think that's something that we can take a massive lesson from, is learn on a daily basis to improve, but don't ever let yourself get too far ahead of yourself that you're not actually progressing or improving, rather than just getting stuck in the day-to-day moment. You've got to kind of like think of both of those things at the same time. I know it sounds a little bit contradictory, but you've almost got to kind of like think that you're there, but you're not there, if that makes sense. Kaine, I've really enjoyed that today. Great to see you, buddy. And guys, look forward to seeing a few more of these with some of our Stride performers in the future. Thanks for watching.